Hey guys, this is Fate at Diablo3StrategyGuide.com, bringing you guys another build breakdown. And today I'm going to be going over another Witch Doctor build, and this of course is the very popular Zombie Bears build. And kind of since the beginning of Diablo 3, this has definitely been one of the go-to Witch Doctor builds. But I've messed around with it a lot, and there's a lot of little small things that I've noticed that a lot of Witch Doctors are doing wrong. But first, let's get into some of the assumptions. I'm going to assume you're level 60. You unlock all the runes and skills you need at something like level 54 or 56. But this really is a build that's most commonly used in Inferno difficulty. And we're far enough along in kind of the game development where I suspect that most of you are at that level. You also should be familiar with kiting as a concept, and it's also very important for this build in particular that you're comfortably geared up, unless you're doing a glass cannon variant, which I don't personally recommend or particularly like. Alright, first, some of the strengths. So Zombie Bears is definitely gonna give you the highest damage output of any of the currently viable Witch Doctor builds. It's similar to Fire Bats, except just more damage. And because of the huge damage output, if you're able to kill mobs without dying, it gives you fantastic farming efficiency. It's also really good in constricted space, and you'll kind of notice in some of these areas in Act 2 and Act 3 where there isn't necessarily constricted space, such as in the battlefields, it's much harder to do efficiently. It's also a great group build. It has very defined strengths and weaknesses, which makes it really good to pair with certain classes that will kind of fill in those gaps in your play. And frankly, it's just a fucking badass build. It's Zombie Bears. Alright, so let's get into some of the gameplay. So first up, we have kind of some very basic footage of me killing mobs, and you can see this is what I'm talking about the constricted space, and this is definitely a fantastic example of an area you want to fight in. And this of course is the fortified bunker in Act 3, and other similar areas are the keep depths that just have these really constricted space and allow you to funnel enemies very easily and use your Zombie Bears skill to quickly kill them. And it's also really important with this build that you are using your other 4 skills that have cooldowns in conjunction with Vision Quest to give you mana regen. Because frankly, this build is not sustainable as far as mana regen without that 300% extra boost. And so you can see me here against this elite pack, and I'm using a lot of the terrain to my advantage. And you just want to kind of get in the rhythm and get used to the cooldowns of Spirit Walk and Soul Harvest, which are both 15 seconds. And I'm sure if you've been playing the Witch Doctor, you should be experienced with both those skills. And you can see that because Zombie Bears kind of has a limited range, which is the major drawback to it, you kind of have to kite a little bit differently than you would for kind of a Fire Bat variant build. And you generally are gonna use these doorways as your friend and kind of hook around the corners and hit foes when you can. And because it kind of has more limited kiting capabilities, you have to be a little bit more geared up, and you can't really fight in these areas where you might be a little bit under geared as easily as some other builds like Fire Bats, which offers greater mobility and just flexibility in its cooldowns. But Zombie Bears definitely has its place in kind of the Witch Doctor build canon, and you can see right here against a reflect damage mob. And the trick against these reflect damage mobs is when you use your Spirit Walk, you're going to have a brief 2 seconds, 3 seconds if you use Jaunt, and I personally like to use Jaunt for this exact reason, where you're going to be able to do damage without actually taking reflect damage back. And that's really when you want to be able to unleash your Zombie Bears on the elite mob. Other than that, you can see I'm just kiting back with splinters. I have a small amount of life on hit on an amulet that I swap in against reflect damage mobs that is helping me quite a bit here. Obviously, if you don't have that sort of luxury, then you have to be a little bit more careful about kiting back. But reflect damage mobs tend to be kind of a more tricky mob for most of the range classes, the Wizard and the DH and the Witch Doctor, of course. And so that I wanted to show how exactly you take those sorts of packs down. Alright, so this is some video footage of me playing with a group, and you don't have to worry nearly as much about kiting in these scenarios. And so you can see I'm just kind of darting in, casting my Spirit Walk and Soul Harvest, and just spamming that zombie bears. I'm playing with a monk and a barb here, so neither one obviously has incredible DPS, so it's very important that I am able to kind of maximize that by using zombie bears as much as possible. Alright, so this is the last elite pack we're going to watch me kill, and what happened here is both of my allies, the barb and the monk again, died here, so I'm forced to kite back. And you can see it definitely can go into this kind of kiting longer range mode that other classes do. Obviously it's not entirely meant for that because you're using the zombie bear skill, and you aren't using the zombie bear skill when you are kind of at these longer distances, but you absolutely can go into this, and this is a great way to take down some of these packs that might have some really tricky affixes for when you get up close into kind of that melee range. And you can definitely kind of revert to kind of a poor man's DH is what a lot of people have kind of termed it. And Splinters itself was one of the first viable Infernal builds just because of the kiting capabilities. And so just by not using the zombie bears rune, you can just go back into that sort of longer distance thing. And you can see once my allies come back, I will try to use the zombie bears more and more because I can more easily and safely get up into melee range against the mobs. One other thing to note is kind of in these constricted spaces, and you can kind of see it to a certain extent here, you can cast the zombie bears, and the zombie bears will funnel themselves if you kind of can't get the full radius. And so that's really nice if you just want to focus your damage and kill one or two enemies, and this really works well probably to the most extreme extent if you're able to put yourself directly into a corner and just hold down that 2 button in my case and quickly kill your enemies. And I'd really recommend this build, especially for Act 1 farming, and I think it's also especially good in Act 3 because you have kind of these dungeonous areas such as the ones we just showed here that have kind of this constricted space that really lends itself very well to a zombie bears type build. Act 1 has similar areas and is just frankly much easier, so it's possible to gear up for it and just be very well geared for the act much easier than some of the later acts. Act 2 is a little bit tricky. There are some areas such as Vault of the Assassin which are very good for zombie bears, but the bulk of it, such as Desolate Sands, is really terrible. It's one of the worst zombie bears areas in the game, and I know many witch doctors that have gotten kind of stuck at that point. So I'd really personally like the Firebat's 5 cooldown build for progressing, and I think this build is probably the superior farm build if you're able to comfortably gear your witch doctor up. So I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of build breakdown and analysis, and so please check out our website www.diablo3strategyguide.com, where we bring you both Inferno level, high level content as well as kind of the lower level stuff to help you kind of get to that level that you want to be at as quickly as possible. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and thanks for watching.